look at your reflection. Not in some metaphorical sense. Actually, look. The curve of your jaw, the whites of your eyes, the soft vulnerability of your skin. You probably think this is what a human has always looked like. But for most of history, if you walked through a forest in what is now Germany, or crossed a valley in Southeast Asia, or climbed a hillside in the Middle East, you wouldn't have been the only kind of human there. You would have been one option among many. As recently as 50,000 years ago, which in evolutionary terms is almost yesterday, there were at least 8 other species of human alive on this planet. Some were stronger than us. Some had bigger brains. Some survived ice ages that should have wiped out anything without fur. And yet today there is only us. One fragile, mostly hairless primate that burns in the sun and can't run very fast. We have become so accustomed to being alone that we've forgotten how unnatural it is. So the question isn't just why the others disappeared. It's why we didn't. For a long time we told ourselves a simple story. Homo erectus evolved into Neanderthals. Neanderthals evolved into us. A clean line of progress, each species slightly better than the last, like climbing rungs on a ladder towards some inevitable destiny. But that story is completely wrong. Evolution doesn't work like a ladder. It works like a bush. Messy, sprawling, with branches that grow in every direction, and most of them leading nowhere. While our ancestors were evolving in Africa, other versions of humanity were thriving elsewhere. In Europe, there were the Neanderthals, barrel-chested, thick-boned, built to endure the merciless cold of the Ice Age. Their brains were larger than ours. They made sophisticated tools. They buried their dead with flowers. They created art. In Asia, there were the Denisovans, a group so mysterious we only discovered them in 2010 through fragments of DNA. We still don't know what they looked like. On the island of Flores in Indonesia, there was Homo floresiensis, a species of human that stood 3 feet tall. Archaeologists call them the Hobbits. There was Homo luzonensis in the Philippines, Homo naledi in South Africa, and Homo erectus, who survived for nearly 2 million years, 10 times longer than we've existed. They weren't failed experiments. They were successful species, each adapted to their environment in ways we never needed to be. And then, one by one, they disappeared. We didn't. The easy answer is intelligence. We like to think we won because we were smarter, that we outthought everyone else, that our big brains gave us some decisive evolutionary edge. But the more we learn, the less that explanation holds up. Neanderthals had bigger brains than we did. They made tools that required just as much planning and skill. They used fire, wore jewelry, may have had language. If raw intelligence was the deciding factor, they should still be here. Homo erectus survived for 2 million years across multiple continents and climate shifts. That's not luck, that's mastery. So if it wasn't intelligence, what was it? The answer lies not in what we could do as individuals, but in what we could do as groups. Think about your life right now. You're probably wearing clothes you didn't make, eating food you didn't grow, using technology you couldn't build from scratch, even if someone gave you the raw materials and 1,000 years. You are alive because you are embedded in a web of cooperation with thousands of people you will never meet. This is the thing Homo sapiens did that no other human species could match. When archaeologists compare Neanderthal sites to early Homo sapiens sites, they notice something strange. Neanderthal tools are almost always made from materials found within a few miles of where they lived. Local stone, local resources. They lived in small, isolated family groups. If the local environment failed them, there was no backup plan. Homo sapiens sites, on the other hand, are full of things that shouldn't be there. Seashells from hundreds of miles away, obsidian tools that could only have come from across mountain ranges, decorative beads made from materials found on entirely different continents. This means that 100,000 years ago, we were already trading, already building networks, already cooperating with strangers. We were the only species that could meet someone we'd never seen before and decide to work together instead of fight. And the reason we could do that is because of something that happens entirely in our heads. Symbolic thought. Humans can believe in things that don't physically exist. Gods, nations, money, justice. The idea that a piece of paper has value because we all agree it does. The concept that someone on the other side of the world deserves rights, even though we'll never meet them. No other animal can do this. You can't convince a chimpanzee to give you a banana today in exchange for infinite bananas in chimp heaven. He knows you're lying because he can't conceptualize heaven. But humans can. We can align thousands of strangers under a single belief, a shared myth, a common enemy, a flag. This allowed us to organize in numbers that no other species could match. When a group of 30 Neanderthals encountered 500 Homo Sapiens, who all believed they were children of the same great ancestor, the outcome wasn't decided by strength or intelligence. It was decided by math. But cooperation alone doesn't explain everything. Because we didn't just outcompete the other species, we also absorbed them. In 2010, scientists finished sequencing the Neanderthal genome, and they found something no one expected. If you're of non-African descent, about 2% of your DNA is Neanderthal. If you have ancestry from Southeast Asia or Oceania, you carry Denisovan DNA. We didn't just replace these species, we interbred with them. We lived alongside them. We had children with them. The others didn't entirely vanish. They became part of us. But that also means something darker. Because if we were close enough to interbreed, we were also close enough to compete. To fight. To take resources that they needed to survive. As Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa between 70,000 and 100,000 years ago, we moved into territories that other humans had occupied for hundreds of thousands of years. We didn't necessarily go to war. We didn't need to. We just needed to be slightly better at finding food, slightly more efficient at organizing hunts, slightly more capable of adapting when the environment shifted. Over time, the other species were pushed into harsher, more marginal environments. And then, slowly, they faded. Homo erectus was the most successful human species in history, measured by longevity. They survived for 2 million years. They endured ice ages, droughts, volcanic winters. They were masters of the hand axe, one of the most elegant tools ever made. And then, they weren't. Their extinction suggests something unsettling. Being good enough for your environment is not a permanent guarantee. The world changes. And eventually, the niche you have carved out disappears. The last of the others to go were probably the Hobbits, surviving on the island of Flores until perhaps 50,000 years ago. Maybe even 12,000. That means when early humans were beginning to farm, when we were building the first permanent settlements, there may have still been another type of human alive on a remote island. We were that close to not being alone. Today we live in a world where we are our own closest relative. The gap between us and the next smartest species, chimpanzees, bonobos, is a canyon. But that canyon only exists because all the species in between are gone. We look at ourselves and assume this is what being human has always meant. But we're not the default. We're the outlier. We are the result of luck, timing, and a strange evolutionary gift for storytelling and cooperation. And maybe a bit of prehistoric ruthlessness. Every time you feel connected to a stranger because of a shared belief, a hobby, a sports team, you are using the exact trait that allowed us to outlast the Neanderthals. That ability to bridge the gap between me and you through a story is what built cities, launched us into space, created everything you see around you. But the species we outlived are a reminder. Evolution doesn't have a protagonist. It doesn't care who wins. The Neanderthals were strong. Homo erectus was durable. The Hobbits were resilient. They all had their turn. We didn't survive because we were better in some moral sense. We survived because we were more connected. And in a world that often feels more divided than ever, it's worth remembering that those connections aren't just a social convenience. They are the only reason we're still here. For 300,000 years, we've been the species that talks, that trades, that imagines. The other 8 are gone. And we're left alone on a planet we've reshaped in our image, holding a torch lit in caves we barely remember. Now that we've won the world, the question isn't what happened to them. It's what we're going to do with what's left.